Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today, we're going to be talking about becoming an author. We've talked about that before, but we're really going to talk about it in a different way. And I loved learning about this because it is very different, and it truly piqued my interest because it is something that everybody can do. I mean, because we all think, I should write a book. I don't know how to write a book. Okay, we'll skip that part. And so, it's something that's really piqued my interest, as I said, and I can't wait to learn more about it. So please join me in welcoming today's guest, Mike Capuzzi, to our program today. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, Deb. Thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity. I look forward to sharing some ideas with you.
Great. Well, let me tell people just a little bit more about you, and then we'll jump into this. So Mike Capuzzi is a publisher, author, consultant, and coach for business owners looking to get to the next level in their business. Throughout his 25 years in marketing and 21 years as a consultant, Mike's innovative use of high-impact marketing has consistently surpassed the expectations and outcomes of traditional marketing concepts and business strategies for his clients. This expertise has led him to be a guest speaker on the stages of some of the world's most foremost experts on marketing, including Dan Kennedy, Bill Glazer, Rory Fatt, Ed Rush, and Julie Steinbacher. To date, Mike has helped thousands of business owners create more profitable marketing. Holy schmoly, this is going to be great. But, let's take a step back because we're actually going to be talking about, as I mentioned, books and how to be an author and how you can help our listeners be authors. But how'd you get to where you are today?
Well, interesting question, Deb, because it was not a straight path, probably like a lot of your listeners, maybe like yourself. As we were talking about before we hit the record button, I'm an engineer by degree. So I have a Penn State engineering degree and did engineering for a number of years. This is back in the 80s. After college, and was fortunate enough to be able to join a software company that was very small. I was employee number 57 and was there for almost 9 years. And in that time, that was when the dot-com bubble happened. So this company went from very small to very big, thousands of employees. I traveled around the world. I was in a technical role, but moved about halfway into my tenure there to a marketing role. So they had to assume marketing responsibilities. They put together this team, and I asked to be a part of that. And it was the best decision I ever made because it got me into the marketing world. I met my wife, who wasn't my wife obviously at the time, but she was an intern there. And, just a great experience. But I always had this itch to work for myself. So long story short, in late 1998, at the height of the dot-com era, I left this great paying job to go off on my own. And it was a tremendous ride. Worked with a lot of software companies initially, big companies. Did consulting for them, marketing consulting, software marketing consulting. And then I actually, probably 6-7 years into that, I read a book by Dan Kennedy on direct marketing, and that changed my life. It just opened my eyes to a new type of marketing, small business owners, et cetera. And I pivoted, and that was probably about 2005, 2006. And since then, I've just been serving small, medium-sized business owners. I call them Main Street business owners, and help them with marketing.
So tell us a little bit more about a Main Street business, because I love this concept, because everything we hear, we do, all those things is online. It's online. And of course, we're not saying that they're not, but what is a Main Street business in your definition?
Yeah, well, I have my own definition, but I just saw something recently. I loved it. I've got to figure out a way to incorporate it in my own marketing. But someone wrote that a Main Street business is the type of business that can sponsor your kid's little league team. And I thought, well, that's kind of a cool concept
That
because
is.
Amazon's not doing
Mhm.
that. You
Mhm.
know, Wayfair's not doing
Right.
that. These big, online marketing
Mhm.
behemoths, they're not sponsoring your kid's
Right.
little league team.
Mm-mm.
So a Main Street business owner, to me, is you know, obviously Main Streets don't exist in a lot of areas, but it's the person who has a local community that he or she
Mhm.
serves with their products or services.
Mhm.
And yes, they will have typically an online component. I mean, who
Mhm.
doesn't? But they have just a localized uh, reach. They have a
Mhm.
localized geographic area they serve, and that's all
Mhm.
they want. They don't
Right.
need to be world famous. I'm in Pennsylvania. They don't need to be world famous in California or around
Mhm.
the world.
Right.
So that's what I define as a Main Street
Mhm.
business owner, the traditional type of
Mhm.
business that sells products and services.
Right. Yeah, and it's funny because when you stop to think about it, we realize just how many businesses are, a Main Street business, and many of them are your doctors, your lawyers, your CPA. You know, could you do business with someone, that's not local? Now, well, for a doctor, probably not. I mean, actually, I take that back.
Yeah.
There are the concierge type of online things, but I'm sorry, I got a boo-boo that needs stitches. That no, and so and certainly your CPA could be somewhere else, but it is still that physical presence. We go in to see them, or we at least pick up the phone, or something like that. And they're also the people that we see at networking events. We see them over and over again. We see them at the kids' softball games, all of those various things. And from a marketing perspective, because, that's I am in heart a marketing person. It seems like we have kind of forgotten them, and so I love this concept of not only, working with them as you do, but, that they do still exist.
Yes.
Because I'm guessing that many of the people that are listening to or watching this program are those type of people. They have that office. Maybe they're a PR firm. Again, they can be working with people worldwide, but they still have a location. They go and they meet with
Right.
people. It might be at Starbucks, might be at a networking thing, but it, Amazon, Walmart, all of those things don't fulfill every need that we have.
Now, and to your point, I mean, the local business owner has a tremendous opportunity that they may even forget from time to time
Hmm.
because there's so much noise about
Hmm.
the online and the death of the local retailer, the death of the local
Hmm.
small business owner, which is nonsense. But they have such an opportunity that these
Hmm.
big behemoths do not have, and
Right.
that's that level of
Hmm.
personalized, me to you, way to create a
Hmm.
relationship. And unfortunately, a lot of small business owners don't get that. They
Right.
just miss the
Hmm.
opportunity. But the opportunity is there to create an exceptional, remarkable business
Hmm.
with just a few smart things.
Hmm. Well, and many of them, especially if they're, say, a doctor, a lawyer, a CPA, they don't market themselves. And now, granted, there are some restrictions, and so we're
Mhm.
not going to go into those, but it's it they do still need to market themselves. Word of mouth is only going to get them so far. And so that's kind of where you have come in with these little, and I'm truly little, books, and I'm going to take a step back, because one of the things that we're always told as a small business owner is, now I'm going to put on my marketing voice, in order to be an authority and to really get yourself out there, you need to be an author. You need to write a book. And, and we all think, oh my gosh, do I have, war and peace in me? When am I going to do it? When am I going to have time to do it? All of these various things. And that's not what you're talking about at all. And that's what really piqued my interest with this, because you have this series, well, not really a series. I mean, it could be a series. Somebody could make them into a series, and some of your authors have, but they're small books. They're bite-sized books. I read your current book, which is Main Street Author. I read it in about an hour. And that's the whole concept. So walk us through this. Tell us how you develop these concepts of these books.
Yeah, and it's the promise of a bite-sized book is that it can be read in about an hour. So just to kind of, I know we have the video, so I talk with my hands too. I grew up in an Italian family, so I've got to talk with my hands and I got to talk about food. So in homage to my Italian grandmother, who was a great cook, she had her recipes. And these bite-sized books that you refer to are it's my recipe for the type of book I believe most business owners should think about authoring. Actually, we call them shooks, Deb, shooks. And shooks stand for short, helpful book. So it's a shook. It's my brand, which in that in itself is a little marketing strategy, right? In order to be different, in order to be new, and in order to appear innovative, you've got to have your own recipe. So shooks are my recipe. They are direct response books, if that means something to your audience, meaning they are the type of book that is designed to get a reader from point A to point B in about an hour, and then offer that person a very specific next step. If you want to work with me, here's the next step. If you want this product, here's the next step. Fortunately, most book authors make a huge mistake and they don't tell their readers what to do next, because the reader's interested in a topic. It makes sense. They want to learn more. And most authors do not give that next step. So
and you should want to learn more from that author because, hello, they're an expert.
Right. So shooks are really meant to be a short, helpful book that can be written by what I define as a Main Street author. And Main Street authors are two types of people. They are the local business owner we already talked about, but also, to your point, they are also people who serve Main Street business owners. So your CPAs, you serve, you don't have a bricks and mortar physical location, but you serve Main Street business owners. So you would be a great candidate for a shook. So a couple things. I know not everyone's going to see the video, but a shook is a little bit smaller. Like here's a traditional business book by a friend of mine. I'm actually interviewing him on my podcast later today. And then here's it's 6x9. Here's a shook. A little bit smaller,
slightly smaller.
Yeah, about 120 pages or so. And it follows a very specific recipe. So we make it very simple for people to know exactly what they need to write. There's so many reasons why I believe a shook is a smarter type of book. Now, listen, I am not against traditional business books. I have a whole library over here. I love books. I love printed books. But there are times when a more focused, easier to read, I have this problem, I need to fix it, here's the book on it. I don't want to read a 300-page book on how to sleep better at night because I'm not sleeping well. I want the answer, and then I want to know what to do next. So that's the promise of a shook, is focus, quick read, because, I don't know if you're like me, but I know when I buy a book and I start reading it and I call these, the traditional book, I call them a lot of times they're books with bloat. They're unnecessarily, they have unnecessary content to reach a certain page count that the publisher requires. So I started and I'm like, oh gosh, and the next thing I know, I've lost interest and it never gets read. So the promise of the book is never realized. I try to solve that by allowing the reader to read it and then feel the happiness and the accomplishment of reading it, and then again going to the next step. So that's really the big focus. It's a different size, a different formula, and again, I think just about anybody can use a shook to promote their business.
And I'm like you. I love books. I have lots of books. I'm completely surrounded in here by books. And I will buy the books that, or have them sent to me that are, marketing, business, all of these various things. And then I travel quite a bit. So I put them in my bag. Don't get it out. Get home. Next trip. And sometimes it didn't even get out of the bag, stayed in the bag before the next trip, and all of these. And so, 3 or 4 times I have gone on a trip. I have lugged this book along with me with every intention of at least reading it on the airplane. Well, there were other things I could do and all of those. and and again, they're great books,
Mhm.
but there's just something about even starting that makes me think, ugh,
Mhm.
what else can I do? What can I find to do? Look, there's, the new In-Flight magazine. Haven't seen it, or take a nap, or do whatever. And what I like about a shook, and this is the main premise of it, is exactly what you said. It's one thing. So this is not how to do LinkedIn, everything you ever wanted to do.
Mhm.
It might be how to write your profile, or, something like that. And so it's short, it's sweet, it solves that problem.
Yep.
And then, like we said, it could be a series, might be that somebody
Yep.
has,
Yep.
multiple of those. But, if that was all somebody needed, they just read that.
Yep. Yeah. So I'll give you an example. So I am working with an elder law attorney,
Hmm.
um, and actually I'm working with her coaching members too to help them with shooks.
Hmm.
But one of her specialties is Alzheimer's disease,
Hmm.
dementia. So we are now working on our third shook in this series.
Hmm.
The first shook was for the person who's been diagnosed.
Hmm.
Okay, so she outlined very specific strategies, ideas, tips for the person who just
Hmm.
received that damaging news.
Right. And is so overwhelmed when they go to
Right.
Dr. Google that
Yeah.
they're like, oh
Yeah,
my gosh. Hmm.
exactly, exactly. And the title, we could talk more about this too, like how
Hmm.
important these different strategies are, but the title of her shook series is You're Not Alone,
Hmm.
because she wants these people to know they're not alone.
Right.
And her firm and all the resources she's
Hmm.
developed. So the first one was for the person
Hmm.
diagnosed. The second shook was for the caregiver. So a
Hmm.
different type of person,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
The mom that has Alzheimer's,
Right.
the
And
daughter that
then
has to
the
support her,
spouse, the
right?
children. Hmm. Hmm.
And then as we've gone down this road for about a year now, we've understood that dementia, which is a form of Alzheimer's,
Hmm.
is yet a different focus.
Hmm.
And people who have dementia, or family member that has dementia, they want to know more about dementia.
Hmm.
So we're just putting the finishing touches on the third shook, which is You're Not Alone, Understanding Dementia,
Hmm.
because it's that focused
Hmm.
topic. And
Right.
I can't stress that enough. I mean, your podcast, it's a focused topic. It's about
Hmm.
an hour long. I mean, it's really an exact replica of a
Hmm.
shook. It gives someone what they want in about
Hmm.
an hour on a particular topic.
Right.
In this day and age, it's a strategy we must all be aware of.
Hmm. Right. And the example that you're using, I'm assuming that, because she is an elder law attorney, in her book, she is talking about the legal things that you need to be doing. Because clearly with Alzheimer's, I mean, that gets, because you have lucid times, you have, all sorts of things that need to be dealt with. And, and you're really just trying to tread water. That's it. And of course, the other thing is you're also trying to not deal with it.
Right.
Let's be honest. It's like, no, it's, especially in the early stages, because there's only going to be, bits and pieces here and there. And certainly family members are going to try to ignore it. But there are things that need to be done. And of course, it's just like any other book. I- Yes, it's going to tell you these things. And as you mentioned, there's a call to action, to say, okay, here we can help you with it. But it's also, okay, you can go off on your own and do this. It's not, you
Right.
don't, it's not a tease is maybe
Right.
the way to put it.
Right.
We're only going to tell you enough so that then you have to call us. No, that's not the goal of this. Sure, we hope that you do the follow-up, but that's not necessary.
Yep. Well, I'm going to forgive me.
Mhm.
I'm going to ask a rhetorical question, but I'll
Sure.
put you on the spot for a
Okay.
second. As
Okay.
a matter of fact, I'm getting ready to speak at an elder law
Hmm.
event in a couple
Hmm.
of weeks, and I've actually incorporated this question into my
Hmm.
presentation.
Hmm.
And if you think about it, Deb, what do most people want? What do most consumers want, right? There's a zillion answers, but
Hmm.
here's what I believe most people want when they're either faced with a problem, they
Hmm.
have a challenge, or they want to learn something new or
Hmm.
achieve something. They want peace of mind.
Right.
I mean, who doesn't want peace of
Hmm.
mind? Who doesn't want to know that when they buy a product, it's going to work the way they say
Hmm.
it does, or when they buy a service? So I share that because in so many businesses, many business owners kind of miss that point. Like my prospects, they just want the comfort. They want to know I'm an expert. They want to know I know what I'm talking about. They want to know I'm good at what I do. And being a book author, being a shook author is a step in that direction.
Right.
So with these shooks that I just described with the elder law attorney, one of the very first strategies we understood we had to achieve was empathy. We had to be empathetic.
Right.
We had to understand. She's a very seasoned lawyer, so she knew all this, but it had to come through in her writing.
Right.
And that's the kind of thing. So, the beauty of a shook, just like you and I are having an hour conversation, a shook allows an hour or so conversation with the author and the reader. And yeah, they may not read it all in its entirety, but the idea is it can be done. And that's a powerful thing to have, that undivided attention. And it allows the author to express empathy, express authority, express expertise, and all the things that, a website, a lot of these other, a brochure, a business card, all this other stuff that we have, it just doesn't allow. So even in this day and age, Deb, I still contend that being a published author of a printed book and then ebooks and audiobooks, down the line, but a printed book that someone can hold, have next to their bed, have on their desk, it's one of the smartest things you can do.
Right. And of course, what I'm thinking about is, your books, especially that, are in some way, say, medical related. This one would be one. You work with dentists, and that one fascinated me too. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But how many times have you gone to meet with said person and you're sitting there for an hour? Hey, look, you could be reading their shook. Whether it's in the attorney's office or the doctor's office or whatever, and it is something that I think there is still something about that value of having the printed book. We were talking before the program, I read a lot of books online. There are ebooks. People, there are some people that an audiobook you mentioned are just going to be the best way for them. But somehow when you've got a book, it makes a difference. If you're one of those people that writes in them, okay. My husband collects books. If I even get a pin near a book, he just,
I'm just like him, by the way.
I know. And
it's weird.
I didn't, I haven't written really in a book since I was in college, and it was like, what are you highlighting? Okay, I'll highlight that too. But there is something about having that book. And when it is that small, you can get through it fairly quickly. Now, we're not saying, you're going to be stuck in somebody's office for an hour no matter what, but it really is a quick read. And the way that they're written, because it's this process to kind of walk people through, that is what makes it a quick read also. You kind of have to do the whole thing, but knowing that, it's really only going to take me about an hour. Okay, I'm going to read it before I go to bed, in the, while I'm waiting for an appointment, whatever, it is that quick thing, as opposed to, gee, I'm going to put it in my bag and lug it with me every trip I go on and never get it out.
Right. Well, in the same way that Main Street business owners have the opportunity of bringing people into their place of business, going to visit someone's place of business or home, networking events. I mean, that, nothing replaces in-person, face-to-face transactions. Okay. Having a printed book that you use as a business card, having, someone says, hey, Mike, why should I do business with you? And I say, well, listen, here's all the reasons why. Just read my book. It'll take you an hour. And I hand this to you, Deb. Regardless if the person's a reader, not a reader, something special happens. I believe something special happens.
Right.
Now, all of a sudden, you, the author, the person who's getting the book looks at you differently. And there's just, in this day and age, even with the plethora of books and Amazon, authors still command a higher level of respect. So if you have lawyer 1 and lawyer 2, dentist 1, dentist 2, chiropractor 1, chiropractor 2, one has a book, one isn't a published author. More often than not, the one that is the published author will be able to charge higher fees, have a, just a better strategy for attracting and keeping customers.
Right. Yeah, because it is a different level of authority. Even if it's just somebody thinking, okay, they took the time to write
Yes,
the book.
yes, yes.
And because that is one of those things people think, oh my gosh, it takes a long time. Now, a shook still takes time,
Mhm.
and one of the things that I really want to emphasize is it still needs to be well written.
Yeah.
Grammar police, there will be mistakes that happen,
Yes.
things that,
There's no perfect book.
right. I'm one of those people. I find it, but, but it does, because that is part of your level of professionalism.
Yes.
If you get there and there mixed up, or the twos mixed up, no, it's not going to matter what you say. I'm just not going to pay any attention. So it does still need to be well written. It needs to be well written in the fact that you've had, we're going to go back to our remedial English, where you had a premise, you've got your subject, you work through all this, you might have characters, however you're writing it, but it has structure. That's it. That's the word I was looking for. And so it is still a well-written book, but it's, it was funny when you were talking about, it takes an hour and you give it to someone. I was thinking, this is very similar to sitting down with someone over coffee
Yes.
and saying, okay, here's how I can work with you. Here's how I can help you. Here's how we can solve your problem. But I'm not having to go to Starbucks and, get all amped up on coffee to do it.
Right. And that's a reality.
Hmm.
This notion of, I write about it in one of my shooks, this idea of undivided attention,
Hmm.
and that a book reader, and you're having a conversation, albeit
Hmm.
a virtual one,
Right.
but and it's a one-way one, but it's still this opportunity of undivided attention,
Hmm.
and now the reader is focused. But I want to go back to something you said, because it's one of my little things that irritate me.
Uh-uh.
Not what you said, but what you brought up, which is, and as you can imagine, the marketing world has unfortunately, um, you know, prostituted a lot of things that were
Hmm.
good, and now, so email marketing, and there's so many things that marketers have just taken to an
Hmm.
extreme and just done, things that I don't appreciate. Well, one of the things I've heard marketers talk about, and these are marketers that help people with books,
Hmm.
publish books, and there's a ton of people out there, but I've heard this over and over again. It doesn't matter if someone reads your book. All you want
Just the
is
fact that you've got it.
yes, right, right. It doesn't matter. They're never going to
Hmm.
read it, so don't worry about it. And a lot of times, to your point, and maybe it's folks like you and me who are more appreciative of good quality
Hmm.
books. But if I get a book that was self-published, right away I can tell if it was an amateur that did it
Hmm.
or someone who at least knew what they were
Right.
doing. There's some fundamental book rules
Hmm.
besides the English ones, but I believe that your book should be written in such a way that you expect someone to read it
Right.
and you
Why
want them to read it.
bother? I mean, that's the
Right.
whole thing. Hmm.
Well, again, it goes back to, again, marketers trying to make the promise, oh, it
Hmm.
doesn't, we can get this done in 2 hours. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter, if they read it, at least you have it and you can hand
Hmm.
it out. I think that's baloney.
Hmm.
And I think, um, if you have something important to say, if you help people
Hmm.
with something, or you can show them how to do something better, why would you not want them
Right.
to read it?
Hmm. Right. Yeah. And whether it's a shook or, something that's much bigger, yeah. Why do it if you don't want people to read it?
Right, right. And again, I think that's one of the mistakes people make. I think
Hmm.
another mistake, as I mentioned earlier, is this idea. There's sort of a, especially with editors and very traditional publishers, that there's a purity to books.
Hmm.
And again, listen, there are obviously different types of book. A shook is a sales tool. This is a
Hmm.
sales tool,
Right.
right?
It is a marketing tool.
It
Hmm.
is, right? So I'm not going to tell you it's the next War and Peace, or someone's going
Hmm.
to remember this 100 years from now. It is meant to help somebody with the problem solve that problem.
Hmm.
Um, but this notion that you cannot promote, that you cannot, quote, sell in a book, I think is mistaken. Now, I don't recommend, nor do I try to do it in my own or for our clients. I don't recommend going crazy, but I do recommend saying, listen, and we typically offer two pathways. for the person who's highly interested and wants the next thing quickly, we call it the active pathway. So we give them very specific directions. Here's the next step. Oftentimes there's other readers who aren't quite ready. They just want more information. So we call that the passive pathway. And we offer those people, those readers, a pathway to get more information. But we're at least bringing the two types of readers, the ones that are most likely to eventually become customers, pathways to get what they want. And I think a lot of people who write books, business books, books to promote themselves, make that mistake. So I just want to let everyone know that, yeah, you do want to tell your readers what to do next.
Right. Right. Yeah, because the goal of this book, it's not a fiction book. The goal is to help them solve a problem. And so that is why you should be writing it. And if you're writing it just to glorify yourself, then no. And of course we've all read business books like that, right? And then we've also read books that aren't well written. So you read the whole book and you're going, okay, I still don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing. And whether it took me 15 minutes or, 5 hours to read it, if I'm not understanding it, that's not going to work. And to me, the book should be, it kind of comes back to that, having coffee with someone. It's an extension of you. So, it's an extension of the conversation. Maybe it's an initial conversation, depending on, what your subject is. And so that's the way it needs to be written. And what I love is that you can write shooks on any subject, and so when I was reading yours, I loved, some of the things like, one gentleman wrote it on how to sell mattresses. Okay. That's like a really tiny little market, but it fit a need. And one of the other ones was a dentist who was using his to talk about fillings and the fact that, there are the mercury fillings are really not good for us. And, for those of us of a certain generation, we all have mercury fillings. And so he was using that as, as a way to get that message out there. Now, clearly, it could be read by anybody around the world. And they're going to go, okay, well, I need to go to my dentist. But he also was using it for his own practice. And so it is kind of that duo-fold thing of just getting information out there and being helpful, as we said, and then trying to, get your own clients, customers, whatever the heck you're going to call them.
Yeah. So if we could talk about that particular shook, that was Dr. Kevin Flood, who unfortunately just passed away unexpectedly. He was a longtime client of mine. It was shocking. It was very sad, but he was a what they call a biological dentist, holistic dentist. So his approach was very holistic, very natural. And one of the things that I was not aware of, because 10 years ago, I also worked with a biological dentist. And it scared me so much. And the idea of mercury in your mouth, that eventually I did have all my amalgams removed. But anyway, he also wrote a book. He asked this is 10 years ago before I really developed the shook for his practice. He wrote the typical 300-page hardcover, spent a fortune, took him 2 years to write. And I couldn't even read the book. It was so technical. So he made the mistake of writing a technical textbook versus a book that's someone who, may be getting headaches or has a reaction, and it turns out it's the mercury. Anywho, Dr. Kevin Flood wrote a short book on the dangers of mercury in your mouth. And again, if you do have silver amalgams in your mouth, there's mercury, and mercury is a bad thing. So it's a part of his practice, was a part of his practice, that he really wanted to raise awareness. Now, here's what's cool, Deb. We wrote a shook. I'm looking over. It's on my bookshelf over here. He used it in his practice. But here's the smart thing that he did, and it's one of the smartest things Main Street business owners can do with a printed book. And I advise all my clients to do this. Is he developed a strategic partner network. So you think about people who are interested in a more holistic approach to dentistry, probably visit health food stores, probably they may go to yoga studios, they may go to chiropractors. There's a sort of a genre of businesses
Right.
they frequent. He worked with and identified like 20 different businesses in his area, and they allowed him to put little racks of his shook, like the ones
Mm-hmm.
behind me, right
Mm-hmm.
there. Put them on their, where people check out or whatever. Give them away. He wasn't
Mm-hmm.
looking. You know,
Right.
shook authors aren't looking to make money with their books. They're
No.
shook, right? So within the first 30 days of doing this, it was either 3 or 4 new patients that he would not have gotten otherwise
Mm-hmm.
had someone not seen his
Right.
shook at the health food store.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it goes back to the power of printed
Mm-hmm.
books, and it also goes back to the power of being a Main Street business owner,
Mm-hmm.
that you have this opportunity. There are other businesses that align with you. So why not ask them, can you put my shook
Mm-hmm.
in there? Give it away.
Right.
Can the CPA give away a financial advisor's
Mm-hmm.
shook? Yes. So unfortunately, Kevin, like I said, passed away, but the power of his shook was very real.
Mm-hmm. Right. And again, it is just a marketing tool. And so by partnering with someone, for one thing, say it's your chiropractor and you're going, well, I like my chiropractor. So if my chiropractor thinks this guy is a good guy, maybe I should read it. And that kind of gets back to either active or passive word of mouth. And so that's good. And because they are these little books, these shooks, it's not a huge investment. You're not giving away a 1995 book. Yes, it is an expense. I mean, clearly you're getting it, printed, there's the initial, cost that goes into it, and then you're getting it printed and all of those various things. But, be honest, go look. If I were to look in my closet, there's probably $5,000 worth of old brochures and business cards and things like that I don't know why I keep them. I mean, for one thing, why are they even in there? Why haven't I recycled them? But, we do all of those things, and we spend the time, and our time is money. So, we do all of those things. So why not make it something like this that is something tangible? I always tell people to blog. That's a great way to get your message out there. Okay, we'll take 10 of your blog posts and holy cow, there's a shook. And clearly different people are going to read, and consume content in different ways. But, there's, again, you've got that book. It is that physical thing. I've got, let's see if I can pull this out. So here's my stack of business cards that I maybe kind of need to do something with. What's going to happen is I'm going to kind of do something with them into the trash can. But I'm never going to throw away a book. Now I might donate it somewhere, but I will never throw away a book. But it's going to go on my shelf. So I might not need that then, but I'm going to see it. And so it's that kind of continual reminder also.
Yeah. A couple things he said that I'll kind of hit on. I have a saying where I say, salespeople use brochures, experts use books.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a subtle difference, but it's an important difference. And, I get thank you letters. My clients get thank you letters. When someone reads a book, they're shook and it helps a person.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard of anyone writing a thank you note to someone because they gave them a brochure.
Right. Oh, this was the coolest brochure I ever got.
Like, I just needed that.
Yeah.
So there's a subtle difference, and it's a very real difference. Another thing that's you hit upon, and this is a key thing. So I published my first book in 2007, and that was really before the time of print on demand. And that first book we had to get, and it was a paperback. We had to print thousands of copies in order to get the price point to a certain price point. Well, that's all gone now. Print on demand, and there's Amazon's print on demand. There's other book printers out there. It enables you that you don't need boxes of books. You don't, yes, the price goes down, but you can get 100 books. Shook, like something like this, is a couple dollars in a quantity of 100. So I always advise clients, don't order thousands of these things. Order 100, 200, use them. You might want to tweak it. You might have to find a mistake. You want to fix it. Then you print the next batch. And they are cost effective. I mean, we put together a really nice package that we mail to prospects who might want to publish with us. And that whole package, including a custom box, a couple shooks is under $10.
Mm-hmm.
It has such a wow factor.
Right.
Digital books don't have that wow factor.
Mm-mm.
Audiobooks don't. Brochures surely don't.
Mm-hmm.
Again, all important tools. I am not
Mm-hmm.
denying.
Right. Yeah, we need all of those.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. But there's still something special about a printed book. And real
Mm-hmm.
quick, I'm working with the CEO of a software company right now. It's so amazing how things happen. But I reached out to him because I was interested in his software. Long story short, his software wasn't right for me, but he is now a Shook client.
Mm-hmm.
And only after he read my Shook Main Street Author, and he said, Mike, that was the first printed book I've read in years. Now, this is the CEO of a software company. He said, all I listen to anymore are audiobooks.
Right.
So I took that in. We now have an audio version,
Mm-hmm.
thanks to Jeff. But he read my book, and I tell people very specifically, here's what you do. Here's how to write it.
Mm-hmm.
Go do it. If you want me to help you, I'll be happy to help you. But and he did. He wrote the first manuscript, the first draft, 15,000 words, which is about what a Shook is.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was stuck. He needed help cleaning it up.
Mm-hmm.
He needed help editing it. He needed help polishing it up, making it look good. So that's where we are now. So he gave up his hands and said, you know what, I was going to do it on my own, but and we make it very cost effective. I mean, Deb, as you can imagine, there are Rolls-Royce type publishers and consultants that charge $50,000. There's somebody up on guru.com that might charge $150. We're not at either extreme, but typically I would advise people, you can do it on your own, but in some capacity, you're going to want to work with a professional who knows what they're doing, because you only get one chance to make a first impression. And to your point a little while ago, if your book, your Shook, looks or reads like crap, it's going to do more damage than good.
Right. Yeah, and let's talk a little bit more about that. You need an editor, whether they're hiring your team or, somebody else, you need an editor. None of us write perfectly. And that's just, we have to have an editor. So, you have to have that. We need the grammar police. Your word processing software is only going to catch so much, all of those various things. But there's also the look. Again, it has to look professional. It can't look like your kid designed it with his crayons, unless that's your target market. And so it has to look like a professionally written book, because it is a professionally written book. And so, there's the guts of, how you do it, what font you use, what your page layout is. I love the fact that you mentioned that, hello, we're all getting a little older. And so you use a little bit bigger font, a little bigger spacing, all those various things. I get books all the time that I'm like, okay, what part of my trifocals am I having to look through here to be able to read this book? No. And so that is, of course, part of that is knowing your audience. And for the most part, the audience is getting to be a little more mature. And so, again, you want this to not be like a professional book. It is a professionally produced and written book. So it's going to take an investment on your part. Not only your time to write it, but your time to get it designed, to get it edited, all of those things. But back to, you've got all these brochures sitting in your closet that aren't doing anything, or maybe you actually threw them away. But, the really cool thing, and I love this, is the print on demand. You find a mistake, all those things. I'm from the time when you got a brochure printed, you had to get 10,000 printed. And I'm sorry, if you gave out, every person you met, you still were going to have 5,000 brochures, right?
Please.
Now you get just what you need printed, and you can fix it. It's and update it. It was funny. Before the program, you asked if I had written a book, and I said, well, I'm one of those that got partway through. I was going to write a book on LinkedIn, and it was going to be the ultimate LinkedIn book, right? Now you can't do that, because you don't know everything. I don't care who you are, even if you're a LinkedIn employee or whatever, you're not going to know all of it. But my problem was, first of all, time. But more importantly, I'd get a whole bunch of it written, and then they'd change it. That was, that button was no longer there, or, this is now called that, or whatever. And so I finally just gave up. Now, the cool thing about a shook is it's little, it's bite-sized. I can revise it.
Yes. And that's a very real thing, by the way. And I don't necessarily share that publicly often. When I start working with clients, I do. So, and I'll make sure I get you a couple printed copies of some shooks just so you could have. And if you want to, donate them, that's fine. But I think I at least owe you that. But
I would give them to people who need to be meeting you,
because
that's the other thing.
Exactly.
And let's be honest, it comes back to that word of mouth.
Yep.
Whether it's that you've got to stand in somebody's office,
yep,
or a trusted person is giving you a copy and saying, hey, you need to check this out. That's the importance.
Absolutely. And referral strategies are very important with authors. But we actually, so we depending on our authors, sometimes we put them on Amazon, sometimes we just print up their books for them and they have them in their office. Again, the local dentist doesn't need to be on Amazon.
No.
Someone like yourself would want to be on Amazon. Someone like myself is on Amazon because I have a worldwide audience. But we have you'll see it there, we actually have a little special code on our copyright page that tells us, because even though there is a version up there, that version of like Main Street Author, it's probably the 8th or 9th iteration. No one knows that. Now, the person who bought the older one's not going to know. The person who's going to buy it today is not going to know. But I know that either mistakes were fixed or I left something out that should have been in there. And that has happened once or twice. Someone said, why didn't you address this? I'm like, good point.
We went from A to C. What the heck happened to B?
We can fix it. I don't have to print more books, but I typically do. So I have them in the office and I can get them out. But it's up there. So what you share there is really this little hidden benefit. And it's the reason why you don't want to have, thousands of books, 100 or two, because it is a living, breathing thing. Now, again, I'm sure a lot of people are like, oh, I wrote it, I'm done with it. And in some cases that may be true. But the dentist one, that's probably not going to change. Something on LinkedIn, something about something that's very current. You want that flexibility, and with print on demand, you definitely do that.
And depending on what it is, you might have to update it every year. Say you are a CPA. Hello, tax codes change. And so then you want to make it clear that this is the 2020 edition. So it might be a different color. It might be, something to really make sure that you differentiate it. That's just kind of one of those things that goes with that line of business. But and what I don't like is when I get a book that is, 4 or 5 or more years old, and there's a slip of paper that's stuck in it that says, for more current information, click here to go to my website. Well, okay, first of all, I'm sitting there with the book, and I'm not going to go and type their, huge long URL because they didn't give me a URL shortener. Now, if I'm reading a digital version, yes, they can put a link in it, but I am almost never going to go to look for the updated information. If you felt the need to have to do something like that, then I'm sorry, do a new edition.
And again, it's simple. In some cases, it may not be required. I have worked with the CPA, and you're exactly right. He had to update it. I do want to just mention, Deb, one of the smart reasons to consider being a published author is something I talk about. I call it a shook-centric marketing strategy. So when you have your own book, your own shook, it enables you to market differently than your competition.
Right.
And I call it shook-centric marketing. So it means a lot of your marketing is about you have a problem, you have a challenge, you want to learn something, get my book first. And this type of marketing, I did not come up with it. In my studies, I've actually, ironically, it has to do with mattresses. I have found mattress ads from the very early 1900s, mattress manufacturer ads from the early 1900s that offer a free book as the lead generation device for someone who's interested in a mattress. So this concept of use a book first, throughout the 20th century, some of the most well-known businesses and experts have used them. You see it today. I still see TV ads on different books that people are offering on Facebook. So if you're looking at two different business owners who do the same thing, one's an author, one's not, one has a book-centric marketing strategy, one does what everyone else does, without a doubt, the person who's the author has an opportunity for a more sophisticated way to position and market his or her business. And it's very real. And, yes, people want to write books because they have it in them. That's great. But I would challenge a lot of folks, yourself included, that if you're looking for a different way to differentiate yourself and to promote your business and to have something that you can talk about on podcasts or whatever, there's nothing like being a book author.
Right. And again, you don't have to be thinking what I do isn't important enough, or, all those various things, because it's just like the guy who has the shook on mattresses. Okay, maybe that applies to 10 people, but it applied to the right 10 people. I mean, that's back to marketing 101, knowing your niche, all of those various things. And so, it's just, it, as we've been saying, it's another marketing tool. And so how are you going to reach those? It's, so think about it, who needs to get more of your message than you can tell them at a quick networking thing, or, maybe they're not going to read your blog, all of those various things. Who is that? And that's one of the things you talk about. You need to, not only is this one subject, it's one main audience. This is not the one size fits all book. And that's what a lot of the bigger books are for. That is for the, okay, if you are a da 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 or a da da, this book is for you. No. A shook is if you are a small business owner who works with, this book is for you. And maybe you write 10 of those, for different audiences, but you mentioned this in your book, and we've talked about it here. You want it to seem like they're talking to you. So if I'm going, oh wow, they knew exactly what I'm having to deal with, as opposed to the this and the this and the this and the this. Oh wait, look, there I am. The this and the this and the this. It's just it's more personal. So that comes all the way back to that whole know, like, and trust thing that we all know so much about. Oh my gosh, Mike wrote this book for me. Now, am I silly enough to think that I really am the only person he wrote it for? No. I'm special, but I'm not that special. But I know that because it is written for me and someone like me, it's not going to go off and talk about problems over here that don't pertain. Right. That's what that other book is for.
Yeah. And that, unfortunately, so many people think, okay, if I'm going to be a book author, I have to write this encyclopedia. I have to write this tome. I have to write.
If I'm going to take the time to do it.
And I have now on my 8th or 9th book, and none of them have been like that. It doesn't have to be that way. It could be that way.
Right.
There may be a reason why, and typically for the person who wants major media exposure, they want to be on Good Morning America, they want to be a press tour, they want to be the big expert in what they do. I'm not serving that person. Right? Like, that takes a real powerhouse media publishing entity to do that kind of thing. For the local Main Street business owner who's got a 5-mile radius of clients and customers, it's a lot different. Right. And again, you can still leverage all the things that we've talked about, but it's much more focused. I'm working, Deb, with a gentleman. Interestingly enough, he was a lawyer turned meditation expert. So he worked on Wall Street, New York City, high stress job.
He thought, ooh, yuck.
Yeah. Well, he now has a bricks and mortar meditation studio where he teaches people meditation. we're working on a shook. So here's how specific it is. A, it's for people who can't sleep well, insomnia. Okay, so already, right? And all he's teaching them is one breathing technique, which he can write in a shook with stuff like that. So it's one very specific challenge, one very specific strategy. And all it's meant to do is get the person who's reading to say, wow, this guy could probably help me even more. I need to find out more about it. And his plan is to do several shooks on different strategies.
Right. Yeah. And part of that is if he had, say, 20 different breathing strategies, people, first of all, they're not going to do it, because they're like, okay, which one am I supposed to be doing?
Yep.
They're going to get mixed up.
Yep.
They're going to put, part of one with part of 20 and then it won't work. And, all those various things. And I mean, it's just like if he were to meet with them in person, if he gives them one thing to do, they can do it. If he gives them 20 or even 5, they're not going to do it.
Amen. I call it the power of being pithy. And it's real. And even though you may be the expert and know everything, doesn't mean your prospect, your consumer wants to know all that.
Right.
Everyone has overwhelm. The tighter and more simple you can deliver a message, the better off you are.
Right. And I keep coming back to thinking about Starbucks. I don't know if I just haven't had enough coffee. The thing, and you've used the word focus several times. If we're meeting someone in person, we do go off on tangents. We get sidetracked, all those various things. But when they've got a book that they're reading about one thing. Now you might still need to meet with them, at Starbucks or wherever, and talk about various things. But you've got their attention for one subject, and that's that. And can you tell? Hello, that I go off on? I'm going to get sidetracked. So for me to be able to hand something to somebody and say, here's this one thing that I want you to learn, that is the benefit to this.
Yes. You may have read it. Just to give a regular book recommendation, there was a book written called The One Thing. I don't know if you've read it, but probably a couple of years ago. I highly recommend it. I forget off the top of my head who wrote it, but it is a simple read called The One Thing, and it really helps people just understand the power of being pithy.
Right. Yeah, because we do go off on tangents. Yeah. And so for me to be able to focus something is obviously a benefit. And I know that I'm not alone, there are, everybody needs to focus and get that attention, get that, that attention on that one specific thing, as opposed to meeting with them and then talking about this and, oh, hey, look, there's so-and-so and all those various things.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. Just don't underestimate it.
I know, and again, it's quick, it's fast. Now we're not saying this is something that's going to take a day or two. In your book, you which is again, Main Street Author, it talks about this is probably, a several month process, from writing it to editing it to designing it, all those various things, primarily because most people are not going to sit down and do the whole thing at once.
Right. Exactly.
Now, I know some people who have done that. It's funny. I know several people. Actually, I think there's 3 people that I know that will write an entire book. They will take an overseas flight. And so they're a total captive on that plane for 12-ish hours. They'll write an entire book. I also know people who rent hotel rooms, and so they're getting away, all those various 99.9% of the people are not going to do that. So they're going to do a little bit here, a little bit there. And so not only are they writing a bite-sized book, they're doing it in bite-sized chunks.
Yes. And we recommend that, by the way, with our program, which is called the Main Street Author Program, shockingly. We step them through. It's about an 8 to 12 week process from initial idea to when you can have your printed books. And we slow them down. I mean, there's times I have to slow them down because I want them to think through things. The title alone takes time. What's the right title? So I love the concept of, it's a bite-sized book that we craft in bite-sized chunks.
You can keep that.
There you go. Thank you.
Well, and when we do it too fast, that's when we skip steps because we're so enthusiastic that we forget that people didn't know how to do this part, and so we need to, but yeah, so it takes time. So again, but this is not writing War and Peace. This is not taking years to do. It's, a couple months, and maybe you can dedicate more time to it to get it done a little bit faster. Maybe it's going to take you a little bit longer because you've got a lot of stuff you're doing. But it's a great tool to consider. So if they're going to consider it, how do they reach you? How do they find out more information about you?
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for this opportunity. I enjoyed this. This was fun.
It's been great fun.
I appreciate it. So I have a gift for everybody listening.
Yay.
And that gift is a couple things. It's a hidden link where you can actually read Main Street Author for free online. And so I'll give you that link. I'll give you the audiobook. So it's a professionally narrated audio version, which I did not do. I'm from the Philadelphia area, so no one wanted to hear my Philly accent for an hour. And I have something I call my Shook building blocks. These, they're designed to be printed off and cut up and really designed like, hey, I want to put this here, this there, even though I give you the formula. It's just, it's a neat little way. So I'll give you those 3 gifts.
Okay.
And that link, Deb, it's my main site, which is MikeCapuzzi.com. And then it's MikeCapuzzi.com/gifts, GIFTS. So MikeCapuzzi.com/gifts.
Perfect.
And, you'll be able to get those 3 things right away.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I want to, emphasize it again. I read the book in an hour-ish, and so, Mike was good to his word. It was a quick read. It was a fast read, and so it is definitely something that's doable. I read it while I was, kind of watching TV last night, and so it is definitely something that I'm going to check out. I think it's a very interesting concept because I was always under the impression that it had to be the tome, the writing, all sorts of things, and to think, wow, I could just write something short and sweet.
And get it done, Deb. Get it done and get it out there working for you.
Yeah. And that's the key. We can always want to do this, have the good intentions, but if you don't have, and see, this is where I do need a copy of your book, Mike. If you don't have the book to hand to somebody, your intentions mean absolutely nothing.
Unfortunately, you're right.
So what final thoughts do you have for everyone today?
Well, listen, I would just challenge everybody. I would imagine I could make the case that just about any business owner should be a Shook author. Pizza shop owner, I don't care. I could make the contention that they could figure out a way to do it. But I'd like to leave everybody with that challenge. I mean, so many folks would love to be able to hand out their book, even show their kids, their wife, their husband, their significant other, whatever. There's something special. I would just say, listen, you can do it. You are smart enough. If you're helping people already with products and services, you have what it takes to be a Shook author. Read Main Street Author. I give you step-by-step directions. If you want to work with me, I'd welcome that opportunity to talk to you. But just do it. Your competition's not going to do it, so why don't you do it?
Right. Perfect. I love it. Well, this has been so much fun, and I can't wait to do it again. So we'll definitely have you on again because I think this is a great tool for people. So I don't know, maybe I need to do it and then we talk about it.
Well, no, listen, what we're going to do, Deb, we'll put it out there. I have a podcast called the Main Street Author Podcast.
It's true.
I only allow authors to be on it. So when
See?
you
so I can't be on it until I write.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
So I'd love to host you.
I love it. That sounds great. Well, until then, or until you're back on my program again, I'm Deb Creer. I've been having a fabulous time talking with Mike Capuzzi, and everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.